We all want to be happier, but how do we get there? First, we start by realizing happiness is not a destination. Being happy consists of micro action steps every single day. I'm your host, Brittany King, and I'm here to guide you along the way. All right. Welcome back to the Positively Real podcast. I'm your host and coach, Brittany King, and I got a special episode for you today, my friend. Today on the podcast, I have Heather Allison joining me. And Heather is the Sacred Feminine Soul and Shamanic Guide for lovers, leaders, luminaries, and mystics. She is an activator of all activators and the Divine Feminine mentor for some of the industry's top Divine Feminine coaches. And when your name came into my inbox and I saw the activator of activators, I was like, done. We need to have this conversation because I too am an activator. I bring ideas into the world and I help people bring their ideas into the world. So when I saw this, I think that's all I read. I was like, done. Let's have a conversation. So thank you for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you.
So I figured we would just start with a little background about who you are, how you got into this work, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, how I got into this work is such a long story. So I always try to nutshell it so it can be nice and succinct. But yeah, I'm Heather Allison. I guide mystery schools, basically mystery school experiences for women. And I can talk more about that as well. But I love that you picked up on that activator of activators and that kind of sang so powerfully for you, because kind of regardless of all of the, modalities and methodologies and ways that I do the work that I do, really kind of what's underneath it all is I help people step into their, whatever you want to call it, their soul calling, their soul purpose, their highest destiny, whatever that is. I kind of help them. I become a bit of a midwife for your destiny, if you will, for your callings. And how we do that is by diving really deep into the mysteries, into the feminine mysteries specifically, and connecting you with your soul, and diving deep into shamanic reholing, as I call it, so that we can work with our, kind of uncover lost soul parts, or aspects of our own internal wisdom, or work with our helpers and our guides in the invisible realms, whichever your belief system aligns with most powerfully. And so that's really kind of the undercurrent to everything that I do. How I got into this was really interesting. I actually was, it was kind of a long road of my own kind of self-discovery. I mean, obviously that never ends until we're not here anymore, but I, had jobs always that I was like, I'm good at this, but it never felt like it really lit me up. And I had relationships that kind of always felt like they were just maybe almost right, but not quite, all that kind of ache that you have where it's like, I know that I'm supposed to be feeling more fulfilled. I know there's supposed to be more meaning here. I know that I'm supposed to have, be touching into something a lot more powerful and beautiful and magical, and all of the things. And it wasn't my experience. And I think it was after yet another relationship ended that I was like, can I swear on here, by the way?
Yes.
We'll put I always feel like I'm but I was like, what the fuck am I getting wrong right now? Why is this not, why do I keep feeling this stuff? That there's more for me, that there's more possible for me. And yet I just feel like I'm just scratching the surface everywhere and nothing's really hitting, and it's kind of around then that I stumbled upon um, this work, the feminine energy work, if you will, the feminine archetypal work, I should say. And it just kind of, it's like hitting a tuning fork. Something just rang in it for me that felt like, oh, there's something in that for me. And I didn't really know why. And I didn't have any kind of logical, rational reasons for exploring it. It's just that it spoke to something that felt really ancient in me, I feel. And I signed up for a coach training program. I didn't think I was going to be a coach. I didn't actually have any designs on being a coach. In fact, I had a job that I really liked, and but I wanted all the information. It just was like, how do I get all of the information about this? And I signed up for coach training, and it was supposed to start about 6 months later, and I got laid off from my job the day before it started. And I was like, oh, okay, universe, I see you. But and so, I that kind of began my journey, and I started out as like a love and relationship coach, and then had a really profound spiritual awakening about 6 or 8 months later. And the doors got blown off my work. So then it became about literally all parts of our lives and all aspects of our relationship, right? With not just our romantic partners or our spouses or whatever, but with ourselves and with our souls and with our work and with our purpose here and with other people, our families and everything. So um it's like the nutshell of how I got here, and it's just kind of been evolving and deepening ever since.
Oh, don't you just love that? And I think so many people listening to the podcast can relate to that feeling of not being able to really vocalize, but just knowing that they're not meant for something more and that what they're doing isn't it. I know that I had that experience as well. And I've also had that experience recently of tapping into something that feels ancient to me, like that feels familiar and feels like I've done it before. And that's actually leading breath work. And I recently became a breathwork facilitator, and it's just the most natural thing that I've ever done. Like, of course, I'm learning and I'm growing each session, but it feels like what you just described, that like kind of like an unlocking
Yeah.
of
There's
something.
a recognition I find that happens in this work and in other forms of work, where we kind of are touching into like, oh, that's the thing. And not because it's like, oh, that's the thing I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Like this one modality is, I don't believe makes up who you are or why you came here. But it's like we touch into the recognition of kind of like where we know we're closer to kind of where we're supposed to be, if that makes sense. And like possibility is like endless here. Possibility just starts opening from here. And it's so important to kind of come into um the things that we explore from that place of like resonance or recognition, or just like I have a hunch that something is there for me and I can't really explain it.
Yeah, that's such a cool feeling too, to actually have that moment of resonance and just recognition. And it doesn't have to make sense. It just, you kind of have to follow it. I called it breadcrumbs because that's kind of how my whole life has
Yeah.
unfolded. It's just these little breadcrumbs that I've just followed. And like each part of my journey was meant to happen, even the most difficult and challenging times, especially in the work setting. But that's, I'm sure if you're listening, you might have had some sort of experience like that where you kind of hear that whisper and you have that deep knowing, and you don't have to make sense of it. You just have to listen to it. So I want to talk about how you use the sacred feminine to do that for how you did it for yourself, but then also for your clients.
Yeah. And this is one of my favorite things. Like I really don't think that well, let me put this a different way. I feel like my beginning to explore the feminine was exactly what prompted my spiritual awakening. Like she governs everything that is of the unseen, whether that's inside of us, like in our deep, our inner wisdom, or our own intuition, our feelings, our emotions, our sensations, like everything that really is unseen within us and in our own experience, but also the things that are unseen around us. And so I really don't think that I would have had kind of like the openness, or like my channel wouldn't have come online, or I wouldn't have been so deeply in touch with kind of the subtle ways that our wisdom shows up for us, so that I could follow those breadcrumbs. I talk about it as similarly, like, but I don't like when we're really so focused up here in our, logical, linear, practical, this is all the stuff that the masculine governs is, like, he is singularity. He's like this, like, oh, here's the plan and here are the steps and here's the template. And those are really lovely, but without her, and we're also over masculinized in this world just because for thousands of years that's what we've been taught and conditioned with. But
Mhm.
without her, and without really like allowing her to take up a lot more room in our experience, we won't have the kinds of subtle remembrances. And like following those breadcrumbs, I'm sure for you, was it's an act of following feeling and sensation and resonance and energy, and just like I don't know how I know, I just know that
Mhm.
inner wisdom. And so it's always like our walking the path of our calling is always going to come through her. if that makes sense. And our remembrance of who we are and why we came here, and our gifts and our wisdom and our medicine and all of that is going to come through her. And then how we kind of continue to walk that path and uphold that is with more masculine. But
Mm.
it's, we find all of this stuff through the feminine because she governs everything that is about our inner worlds and the unseen around us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Now, if someone's listening and they're unfamiliar with, the talk of masculine, feminine energy, how would you break it down to someone that this is brand new to them?
Yeah. So the masculine tends to be, so just kind of a little, yeah, a little nutshell for these. So masculine tends to be more external and more singular and more, uh, yeah, more external and more singular. And the feminine tends to be more internal and expansive, multiples, both and paradoxical, that kind of thing. And so if you consider how we're typically raised in this world these days, I mean, even in a lot of the marketing, everything really tends to value all the masculine. And that's why we have gotten so over masculinized, is because we're really conditioned into and taught to value mostly the things that are found in the, like, what does it look like? Does it make sense?
Mhm.
Um, how productive are you being? Even like Nike, like just do it. That's a very, like, doing is more masculine. It's action taking. It's external, and we're really kind of steered away from, or we're taught to devalue the things that are of the feminine, like,
Mhm.
stifling our feelings or not even knowing kind of how to be with the full spectrum of our emotions. Um, Energy, we think, is like make believe or woo woo or whatever. We just kind of
Mhm.
are taught to devalue these things that we can't see because it's not real unless you can measure it or unless you can put it on a spreadsheet or whatever. The Our bodies, like, look how much we spend focusing more on our external worlds and, like, listening to other people than we do paying attention to what's actually happening with our own bodies, or even just taking time to nourish our bodies. It's just so focused on, you know accumulation of stuff, material things that are outside of us, or what we're doing that looks appropriate for what's outside of us. Or, do you know what I'm saying? So all of the things that are either logical, linear, practical, and rational kind of, and external, being masculine. And then things that are much softer, that we would kind of deem softer or less definable or less measurable, are typically of the feminine.
I love that. I love the way that you described it because it's so relatable because
Mm.
really think about, and I'm right now just nose deep in studying the nervous system and nervous system resilience. And even when I understand, the masculine and feminine, the masculine energy is what leads to nervous system dysregulation. So like the doing and the achieving and the pushing yourself and not getting sleep and, wearing your lack of sleep as a badge of honor and doing the most. That's all external activity. That's that masculine energy. And that's what leads to dysregulation. Now, when you get into your body and you listen to your body, that's the feminine energy, and checking in with your emotions is really important to nervous system resilience and being able to not have no stress, because that's unrealistic in our modern society, but being able to be more flexible and fluid with the stress. And the more you tap into your feminine energy, the more nervous system resilience you'll have. So as you're saying
Yeah.
this, it was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. And like there's science behind it. It's not just like this woo woo, like, oh, the energetics. And, that's just too out there for me. There's actually, when you really think about it from like your body standpoint, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, yeah, people have studied this. It's not just, like, Marion Woodman is one of my
Mhm.
favorites to kind of recommend if people are looking for books around the feminine and masculine. And she studied this for decades, and so it's not, and it shows up everywhere in our psyches, in our emotion bodies, in our traumas, in our, addictions, in every part of our life where there's basically, like, one of the things that people ask me is, like, how do you know if you're over masculinized? And my, how do you know if you're stuck in the masculine? How do you know if you're over masculinized? Or how do you know that the feminine, like, they are being called into deeper aspects of your feminine? And my question is always kind of a little bit a little flippant, but it's actually also true. It's like, do you suffer? do you struggle? Like if so, then it's an invitation. It's always an invitation into more of her. If you feel stuck, if you feel like you're exhausted or overwhelmed, if you feel like anything that we bump our heads up against as humans, it's all an invitation into more of the feminine, because she is going to be our ability to open through and to like open around and integrate and heal with, not brace against, but heal with anything that is here that feels hard and feels like struggle or challenge or suffering or what have you. And then on the flip side of it, like every fucking thing that we desire as humans is her. Like
Mhm.
it's, love, which you can't plot on a spreadsheet and make happen because you work hard enough at it. You know what I'm saying? It's you can't fall in love. That's not how you fall in love. Feeling like knowing we're in the right place on the right path. Our intuition feeling like we know that we're
Mhm.
in alignment with our soul or what have you. None of that happens. That happens all in the feminine. um, Connection, depth, pleasure, intimacy, like everything that we desire, even abundance and bounty, happens in the feminine. So we can't be without the masculine either. So this isn't about like masculine bashing or and we're not talking men and women. For those who are new to this, it's not a male female thing. We all have both of them. But we need the masculine too. It's just that where we are in our kind of collective history is we've been so over focused and fixated and valuing the masculine only, and actually rejecting and taught to fear so much of the feminine that we have to relearn her. And so that's where kind of all of the remembrance and the recognition comes in, and where all of our abilities and all of the kind of magic and miracle that we're wishing for tend to start unfolding is in her.
I love that you said that everything we want is just within the
Everything.
feminine, like
Yeah.
literally
Mhm.
everything. And we think that we have to do more,
Yeah.
achieve more to then be worthy of it when it's like already available. We already have access to it. It just takes that slowing down, becoming present with yourself, finding it in the stillness. And I think that because we have been so over masculinized, and it just is our society, it's just across the board, and just the way that our like culture and working forces is designed for that type of energy, right?
Mhm.
So it almost feels like it's unsafe or and unfamiliar, but unsafe to go into the feminine.
Totally. And it is unfamiliar because we have been taught for so many thousands of years to abandon her, really.
Right.
Right. But the thing is, like, there's evidence of our desire for her everywhere. Like literally,
Everywhere.
like you said, everything that we crave, everything that we ask for, everything that we like pleadingly ask our partners for, or you know what I'm saying? Like everything that we wish for in our soft subtle body, even if it's like, god, I wish I could just take a week off and do nothing and just relax. Like that's her, she's speaking to, you know what I'm saying? And then the other thing is, if anyone listening has ever googled or looked into how to manifest anything, you're wishing for, what's happening there is you're wishing for miracle and magic. You're
Mm-hmm.
not looking for, like, you're wanting an experience of miracle and magic. You're not actually Googling how to like step by step build something. You're not looking for the linear process of like, here's how you invest X amount of dollars so that you can have this much money. Do you know what I'm saying? You're
Totally.
actually craving her. And so I would bet you that like pretty much every single thing we Google, especially when it's like those middle of the night Googling sessions where we're like, God, how do I have, you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
It's all feminine, it's all her.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Like our unfamiliarity with her and therefore our kind of fear of her. And listen, it's not just because she's unfamiliar to us that we fear her. We've actually been taught to fear her too. So there's a lot of aspects of kind of uh, ways that we've been taught to fear the dark, if you will, that is actually just the feminine. But
Mhm.
we've been taught to fear her um, as dark, as bad, as not valuable, or as not like safe to enter into, like the unknown, for example. That hasn't always been our experience, that we're afraid of the unknown.
Right.
Peoples that kind of lived a much more natural life, if you will, a much more like aligned with nature life, they didn't have any form of guarantee because they understood that that's how nature works. So they didn't fear the unknown as much as we do, but we grip so deeply to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our brain just desires certainty because we want to know how everything is going to play out. And that's a part of the masculine conditioning. And I notice that with the clients that I work with is when they come to me, my high achievers,
Yeah.
when they come to me with what they want to bring into the world or an idea that they want to know every step.
Mhm.
They want the linear. That's the sign of like true masculine is like, give me the step-by-step play-by-play. So I know everything's going to be safe and I know that it's going to work out. And
But
it's
how? But how?
that's the Googling of like, how do I do this? And I'm always like, you're asking yourself the wrong question. Because it's really in that trusting and the knowing that you'll figure it out. You'll take a step. And if you make a mistake or you fail, you're going to learn from it. And then you're going to take another step. And that's the process. It's
Mhm.
not how do I do it? It's like, what's the next step? And that's where the lovely feminine comes in.
Exactly.
So you mentioned the manifestation, and I do want to touch upon this because I'm curious how you do your manifesting with your clients.
Mhm. So my perspective on what manifestation actually is a bit different from quite a lot of people and how they teach it. I don't believe we actually are intended to just kind of inflict our human will on the world and like our ego desires on the world. It's part of it. We are here as creators too, but that's the paradox. We forget, I feel like most teachings tend to forget that it's co-creation, and it's not just I want to make what I want to have happen and
Mm.
enforce my will upon the world. That again is the masculine speaking. That's the patriarchy. That's the wounded masculine that we see happening in the world everywhere, which is just conquer nature, build the buildings, build everything that we want, like take the resources. Who cares what's happening with nature? You know what I'm saying? That's that mindset and attitude around
Yes.
around manifestation. For me, it's really important to come into relationship with manifestation as, like I said, co-creation, where it's not just about what your human and ego, like human mind and ego wants. It's also about what your soul came here for. And so it's really important to be like plugging you back into that, where you're walking both of those things and not just what the human part of you wants, if that makes sense. Not just what you think you're supposed. I can't tell you how many, I mean, it's everywhere. It's in all of pretty much all of my clients where it's like this magical miraculous thing happened, whether it's like the relationship of their dreams or how their business succeeded and like blew up in a good way, as you know. But like it wasn't because it happened the way that they expected it to, or in the package that they thought it would come in, or what have you. It's always the like, I had no idea it would happen this way. And it's that kind of thing where we're like, yeah, move in the direction of your calling as a human, right? Like the things that you want, the things that you're desiring, the ideas that you have. But can you also be at the same time letting yourself be shown? Like
Mm.
what's bigger and what's more magical and what's more beautiful and what's more meaningful and what's more actually aligned with why you came here in the first place. And so it's less about a kind of the way I work with and speak about manifestation is kind of taking us out a little bit of that wounded masculine desire for complete control over everything that happens, because again that's like that wound and that over masculinized part of us, and really like come into the co-creation with the mysteries, right, and with the unknown, like you said. And so it's an unpatterning and unhooking from the ways we tend to want to just have this vice grip of control on everything around us, and not giving up, right? Like it's not like, oh, well, I guess I'll just settle for blah, 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 like whatever it is that doesn't feel good. It's just we have to bring her back into it. And that means we have to walk a bit more with the unknown and the unseen and the mysteries as well.
I love that. I love that you teach it as co-creation because it's like what we think, how it's supposed to be, and then how it really unfolds.
Mm.
And I see this a lot with my clients too, but it's like what comes through is so much more magnificent than the original thought and the plan. And, another thing that I'm noticing, because I've been coaching for 5 years now, some of the things that were planted in some of my past clients that I stay in touch with is coming through 5 years later.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's like the way to get there is different than the way they thought, which is everything. I mean, I in my own life too. And I think it's like goes into what you're saying about the feminine of just that trusting. I have a saying with a group of my clients, and we say T the P, which is trust the process. And that's really like trusting her and knowing that like if you can lean on her and trust that it like it's going to work out better than you could logically literally like put it together, being able to just trust it. So I love that's how you teach
Yeah.
manifest. And I really agree with that school of thought, because I believe too, all of our souls came here with a mission and we forget it. And then we have to go through the work to remember it.
Mhm.
And it's sometimes, I think that's why people run into blocks with manifesting, because they're like, I want to manifest $1 million. And it's like, okay, like, well, how does that serve your soul's purpose? Now, if you translate to making $1 million into life's changed, right, or value added to someone's life, that's different focus. But when it's just focused on yourself, I think that's where people run into the block of
Yeah.
manifesting.
Mhm. And you can do it, right? Like you can totally like work hard enough or find the plan, and the
Right.
steps to take to build things, like to build what you want. Um, but and it's amazing because you'll be proud of yourself. You're like, I did this, I built this, I achieved this, which is lovely, all in our masculine. But a lot of times that exhausts us. We get overwhelmed and
Burnout.
exhausted and burnout and like
Mhm.
and we this happened to me when I was younger. Like we just kind of start heading in that direction of the thing that we thought we wanted. And a lot of times we get 10 years in and go like, wait a minute, this
Mhm.
is actually not this is not actually fulfilling me, or it's not actually what I thought, or it's not actually what I want. Where did I miss the turn? you know but when you're in co-creation with the unknown and like letting yourself be guided by something bigger, by something higher, by your soul, then we like one of the things that we wish for most, I feel, as people, like just existentially as humans, is wonder. Like we've lost the wonder,
Mhm.
and we've lost that, like, oh yeah, there's something beautiful and like you can't explain, like that you get to experience and feel through your whole system. And it's like bringing more of that in this kind of manifesting, and sacred manifesting as I call it. But it's not just the tension of those two things either. Like it's not just the tension of like I could build it over here in my masculine, or I can experience it as like wonder and just fully trusting that magic's going to happen. For me, it's the in between is also the feminine, insofar as it's how we hear our soul. It's how we sense and feel the resonance of things, like we talked about earlier, of like following those breadcrumbs. Like how do we listen? How do we hear? How do we pay attention to those deeper things? And like that requires some form of stillness, some form of softening into sensations and emotions and intuition, so that we can actually have a relationship with those languages to know like what's real and where we're being called and what's aligned, if that makes sense. So it's not just like a blind, like I'll just go into the unknown and follow and trust that the things that I'm doing are gonna, do you know what I'm saying? It's like we get to follow the voice of something bigger and something that's full of wonder through our vessel, like through our experience, as we learn the languages of the feminine, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And I love that you mentioned that it's not that one or the other, right? And we go into that extreme so quickly of like, you're either, manifesting, creating your life from the masculine energy, or you're just full blown in feminine energy, kind of just blindfolded, just like, it's all going to work out. Like, right. Like it's important to bring in both. And it's that both and, which again, like you said earlier, is the feminine. And I do love what you said about the joy and the awe and the wonder. I'm
Mhm.
seeing that through the eyes of my daughter, who's a year and a half, and
Um,
say that I definitely I was for sure in masculine energy. I was such a doer. I was a yes person. And then when I got pregnant, I knew that was going to have to change. And it shifted everything for me. I mean, just besides the fact that like I literally did become her mom and I am more in my feminine energy. I just see the benefit of it more and more unfolding every single day with her in my life. And of course, she is my teacher. I know she came into this world to be my teacher. And even when we go on walks, there's this really spiritual woman that is in our neighborhood. And she even said, she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, Ellie is an old soul. She's like,
yeah.
you're an old soul, but she's even older. Like she came here to be your teacher. It's like, I know, I'm already well aware of that. But it's crazy. Like it is so, I knew it, but experiencing it day to day and watching the world through her eyes and the true wonder and presence and just purity of it all is just such a blessing, and it's such a gift. It makes me emotional just thinking about it. But it really does bring in that feminine energy and not, again, you said this earlier, it's not about male or female, right? It's the energies. And I see it in my husband too. I won't say he's a different person because he's himself, but just this more evolved version of himself. And he has tapped in. Oh, I'm going to cry right now. It's just so beautiful to see that energy within him, the presence, the calmness, the like stillness that he has with her. And he's so present with her and just makes such a effort to not have his phone out, to be with her when he's with her. And it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
And he is like the most logical, linear thinker I know. Like his prefrontal is firing at all times. So to see, I'm like, this is possible for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's like the remembrance that comes in as you see and witness your little one kind of interacting with the world in like total purity and just like absolute innocence. And
Mhm.
yeah, a total reminder of kind of the things that I don't know, this sounds a little dire, but like the things that we've kind of, I was going to say the things that we've lost. And I do kind of feel like that's somewhat true, but it's just the things
It
that we
is.
forgot, the things that we
Yeah.
forgot and started deprioritizing. And I
Yes.
love that so much.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to put it. And it just does put things into perspective. It's like much
Yeah.
different. So great. So great, Heather. I love the sacred manifesting. I'm curious if you have some tangible things that you share with your clients and help them with this process.
Yes. So a couple of things. One is the thing that I always invite, well, I say women because I typically work with women, but I do work with men. It's just tends to
Yeah.
be in a very kind of custom way. Because my spaces are mostly for women. But thing I always invite people to kind of start doing a bit more of is taking action for like following those breadcrumbs like we talked about, especially the ones that don't seem to make any sense. And it doesn't mean you have to go like jump off a cliff about it, like it doesn't mean you have to like quit your job and move to do the whole eat pray love thing or anything like that, although if you want to, great. But it's like, can you choose a little bit more of the things that don't make sense, and you can't like don't plot out perfectly on this like, yes, this is a rational logical thing for me to do, and like start following those things just because you have a sense for them, and just because you have a feel for them, and just because you're like, I don't know, something about this is calling me and I can't really explain it. And because I feel like when we start doing that, when we start kind of giving, because what we're doing is we're choosing the mystery when we're doing that, right?
Mm,
We're not, we're letting go of that chokehold that we have on the shoulds and how things are supposed to be, and like what we expect and the requirements that we have for like how the world shows up for us. And we're really coming into this beautiful co-creative energy, because it's this, I'm venturing into a place that's not, or into something, into a calling that's not even here yet. So it's kind of this reaching out and touching into the quantum realms, if you will. And it's such a beautiful, powerful, fertile place of creation, of co-creation. Another is to let yourself move toward something I always share with my clients is let your calling be a direction and not a destination. Like if you're feeling the calling towards something, like move in that direction 1,000%, but then let go of, like I said, the stranglehold that you have on how it's supposed to, how you think it's
mm,
supposed to show up,
mm,
and allow yourself to be guided. Because one of the things that happens when that example that I said, where well, I went to school because I wanted to be a lawyer or whatever. And 10 years in, I'm like, shit, I'm not actually happy. I thought this is what I wanted.
mhm,
It's because we weren't listening. We kind of put the blinkers on, the blinders on, and went like, oh, that's the place. That's the thing that I want to achieve. That's the destination I want to go to. And we don't continue to listen in the journey, if that makes sense. And
mm,
so if you can just let that be a destination, or sorry, a direction that you're being called into, and listen for the turns, the twists and turns, the things that are going to be speaking to you and calling you, and to like take a left here or take a right here or whatever, then you'll be again in that really beautiful kind of in the moment, present moment, in the now co-creation with your soul and with what's true and what's real and resonant for you.
mm.
And combination of both of those things is really powerful. And I know they're still kind of really like really of the mystery. Like it's not like take these steps. for your next manifestation. But there's such important frameworks and like foundations for creating anything that you want, as long like that isn't just here's how to build this in the next 10 steps, if that makes sense. If you really actually are wanting to experience something of wonder and something of magic and miracle, then it kind of is, we have to build our foundation of what we're doing and what we're choosing and the actions that we're taking on a really beautiful foundation of the mystery.
Yeah. And I think that if there were a step by step, it would go right back into
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
masculine energy. And it's like that we need the masculine energy to take the actions and to move forward, but it's within the realm of the feminine.
Yeah.
The feminine energy is first being
Yeah.
able to really connect with that place. And I love the like move in the direction, right? But don't get so focused on the destination. I love that because it's so true. We get so focused on the outcome that we lose sight of the magic that is the journey that's unfolding. And then again, with my daughter, I'm like, right now, I mean, she's only been alive for a little over 20 months. Like, like these are the days right now. They're happening, right? Like the magic and the mystery of having a toddler and like reparenting myself and everything that's happening. Like, I don't want to fast forward through this, even though it's uncomfortable and there's so much unknown and uncertainty, and I've never done it before. So I'm like, what am I doing? It's so powerful to just be in like moving in this direction without being so focused on some end outcome. Cause in terms of the end outcome, it's like, okay, like she grows up and is an independent human and like goes off to go live her own life. I'm like, I don't want to focus on that outcome. I want to focus on the journey that we're having together and what we're creating, co-creating as a family. Because my focus for so long was, I manifested this life. I've manifested my relationship, everything, my daughter, like everything that's happened. And I thought that was it. And it's like, oh no, now we're just getting started.
Right. It's such a perfect metaphor because it's like,
Yeah.
why would you only focus on the destination of she's an adult, she has this kind of job, exactly, she's married to this exact person. Like, that's not how that works. And
No.
that's right. And just in the same way that as a parent that like if even if you could prescribe it that specifically, it probably wouldn't be what made her happy.
Right.
Because she has a whole life of experience to find that and to be her own human that's different, you know what I'm saying? And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with our calling, with the same thing with things that we want to manifest. We have to let them have a life of their own and become the things that they're meant to become and that they want to become.
Mhm.
It's like that, I think, is one of the most foreign things for people when it comes to manifestation, because we're typically taught to kind of, it really is just this like, it's just straight up control and manipulation is what we're
Right.
being taught in typical manifestation work.
Yeah.
um, and we're not kind of, it's like, oh, it wants to have a life too. It is of the mysteries, it is of the unknown right now, and so it has to have that if we want it to come to life, we have to give it an aliveness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense because that's what I know we probably both have seen with the people that we work with is they've followed a path based off of control and manipulation and what
Mhm.
they thought they were supposed to do and check off all the lists. I just started with the client and she was like, I got my job. And I was like, where, like, I thought I got punked. I was like, this is it. Like I followed everything and I feel so empty inside. And
Yeah.
you peel back the layers, it's like, oh my gosh, like so much of what I did was from this place of fear and control and what everyone else told me that I'm supposed to do and what I should do.
Yeah.
And I do love having this perspective. And I know it's going to be challenging at times, but being able to see it firsthand and be like, no, you're your own human. And I get to I got to give you the space to explore and figure out what your soul's purpose and like what your journey is. It's so invigorating to get to be a part of that and a little scary because, you only know one way. But, in terms of your calling and your purpose, it's like you don't have to be a little toddler to start. You get to meet yourself where you're at and get to have that come through.
Yeah. I love that this is kind of the turn that this conversation took, and like how that just came through, which is like, if you want your kind of calling or your manifestations or your desires to come alive, you have to give them a life. Like you have to, because it's all really, I've just started talking about this work as kind of like me as midwife to your soul calling, like midwife to your sacred destiny, or whatever you want to call that, or your, deepest desires, your manifestations, because it really is kind of like being a parent. Like it's that level of nurturing and
Mhm.
yet like release at the same time,
Yeah.
because you can't just plot out the next 18 years for
Mm-mm.
her and just and have it go the way you want it to. In fact, it's literally going to devolve and become something like that is the last thing that you ever wanted, if you grip that hard and if you force it into being what you want it to be. And it's so perfect for this conversation of like creating your desires and calling in your soul calling, or any of that. So I love that. And that's kind of the whole gist of this work, is like becoming the creator archetype, which again, like I said, is their parent, is the parent of these two archetypes, right? It's coming into that relationship, that sacred, that archetypal trinity. Actually, I don't even know if I talked about this on here, but
But
it's
let's wrap it up with that, because it is very like full circle to what we've been talking about.
yeah, because it can't just be about the feminine and the masculine, that polarity. It definitely can't be just the masculine, right? Because that's where we're kind of coming out of in this really patriarchal, over masculinized world. But it also can't just be about the polarity of the feminine and masculine either. It really has to be what I teach, which is the archetypal trinity, which is like the feminine, the masculine, and then the creator archetype, or the primordial feminine. Because that is our creator power. Like that is the lives that we're here to try to create, if that makes sense.
Mm.
But it's important that it's all three of those, that it's not us trying to kind of just dictate everything and have it be exactly what we have in mind. It's also the dance with the unknown. It's the dance with what's higher, or what's of our soul, or what we can't see yet, what we don't understand yet, what we haven't been shown yet. So I love that metaphor. It's like, it's so powerful for anyone listening, whether you're into the energetics or not, just starting to relate to your desires and the things you want to call in or manifest or create as your children, and understanding that you cannot take on that much control and that much like pressure and
Mm.
that much forcing things to happen if you actually want it to become what you want it to become.
Yeah. Oh God. I mean, we could do a whole podcast episode about this. I could go down a rabbit hole, because, a part of your job as a parent is to not control, but to keep safe, right? Like that's the job, keep you safe. And that's a big key to all of this work, is creating that safety in your body, feeling grounded, calm, at peace, because that's the fertile ground to bring in the feminine and to give the desires and your calling a space to breathe and be there. And if you don't feel safe, and if you can't do it because it doesn't feel safe to go after, it doesn't feel safe to tap into that energy. So it's just so full circle, because that's what I'm learning as a I'll probably say I'm a new mom until I don't know when, maybe when she's 18, maybe longer, who knows. Like as a new parent, like yeah, safety is my job, but I'm not here to control. I'm not here to control. And I think the traditional paradigm of parenting, which also comes from the masculine, is all about control and fear, and
Mhm,
it's a new way of doing things, and it's scary because it is unknown.
mhm.
And that ties so much into bringing your desires and calling into the world. Like there's so much parallel, and it's not, like they're part of the same process.
Yeah, yeah.
And my girlfriend and I, after I taught spin this morning, we were talking about parenting, and she was like, yeah, I'm parenting. I'm a parent. I'm parenting my inner child. Right. It's like, whether or not you have children or want to have kids, like it's all about like the same energy to yourself, to your desires, to your dreams, all of that. It's not just if you have a physical human being that you're responsible for. Because even if you don't want to have a child, you still have a responsibility to bring in your soul's calling. Like that is our responsibility on this earth, because we are creators and we're meant to grow and we're meant to evolve.
Mhm. It's all just sacred relationship, right? It's all just coming into, because that's all we're really talking about, is can we come into a relationship with literally anything, literally everything,
Yeah.
without so much of our own like agenda and trying to enforce that, like, and flip that and force that upon other.
Right.
whether that's our soul or that's our kid or that's our partner or that's the, you know what I'm saying? Like the nature itself, like any of it, it's can we come into a much more, again, co-creative relationship, a sacred relationship where it's always the both and
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. And which is exactly
so
what we do
good.
in mystery schools. So it's just like the whole point.
Well, and that brings me to my last question is tell me a little bit about Mystery School. Where can people find you if they want to have more of this conversation?
Yeah. So I offer three different mystery schools right now, mystery school experiences. The first one, Golden Goddess, is the deepest, and it's kind of my most signature, most deeply held, most personal and intimate, intimately guided by me. And we go really deeply into the archetypal trinity, and it's really like this whole. It's kind of like a portal, like you're literally like walking through a door gateway to a new version of your reality in this space. And it's such a magical, beautiful, it's like walking the path of miracles. It's the most shamanic work we do, the most energetic healing work we do. But everything I teach too has its energetic counterpart, but also has, because it has to be both, has really practical, tangible ways to implement it and take action and bring it into your real life. So it's not just the energetics, it's we're giving you tools and practices and process for everything. um, Whether that's for your love life or for your business or for your spiritual and intuitive experience or just personal, for how you put this, but like kind of our personal power or like reparenting ourselves or that kind of thing. There's Solaria, which is a really beautiful step into the feminine herself. So it's kind of mm, it's it's a perfect place for women who want to dive deep into kind of the more like the richness of the feminine and the depths of the feminine and the mystical nature of her, and kind of the slowness and the sensuality of her, if that makes sense. Where Golden Goddess is very like everything and the mystery and the mystical and all of that. And then the last one is kind of the most sacred masculine flavor, if you will, insofar as it's a mastermind and all access pass to all of my self-guided courses. So there's all of the things like goddesspreneur, so feminine energetics for your business. Um, She Wolf, which is really like walking the path of our, like the wilderness path of our soul calling with the most power and bravery and courage and all of that. And it's got the most kind of like step by steps, if you will, in that. But you have access to everything that I teach as far as courses go in that journey. And then there are lighter options too for anybody who kind of wants to dip a toe in, and make their way into one of the deeper journeys a little bit more lightly or a little bit slower.
Amazing. I love it. So these are, I'll put these, make sure that I have all this information and I can put them in the show notes. So if
Oh,
anyone is curious or wants to learn more, it sounds like that you have a couple different offerings that fit different needs.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this was so wonderful. It's such a delight talking with you, Heather. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much
much.
for taking the time to be on the podcast and sharing your wisdom. There were so many things that you shared that that resonance, that deep, like, oh yes, like just deep connection, that just feels, when you tune into it, it just feels so good in the body. Is there anything else that you want to share before we wrap up?
The last thing is I would say there's a lot. I don't know if you're familiar with human design, but I'm a manifester. So like I'm pretty prolific. So there's a lot that I have here. And if anybody's curious, just reach out to me if you're wanting to find something that's like the perfect fit, or if you have a particular budget you want to stay within. I really tried to create this work and was called to create this work in a way that everybody could choose it if they feel called here. No matter where you start, you're still choosing and making your way into the same place. And so it doesn't matter where you begin if you just let yourself enter in. If something here was speaking to you or feeling like that, oh, there's something, some form of ancient remembrance or recognition that I'm feeling in my body, feel free to reach out and I can help you find the right fit for you.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that that's, what this is truly about is it doesn't have to make sense. It does
Hmm.
not have to make sense logically if you just kind of feel that little ping in your body and the difference, because there's a difference between listening to something or seeing what someone else is doing and be like, "Oh, I want to do that." Like that's really coming from like focusing out and knowing it in your body. It's just completely different.
Yeah.
And I'll say from the experience that I've had with breath work, I never once went to a breathwork class live. I've done all my breathwork virtually. And it wasn't like, oh, I want to do that. It was just, I did it. And I was like, I'm supposed to do it. Was just this like instant, like ping of, you're supposed to do this. And I was like, what? Like where, what, like how did this come to me? You know, it's like what, and then the more breath work I've done, the clearer and louder that voice has become. And so I think just being able to just tune in, go inward, trust your internal wisdom because we all have it. We're all born with it. I'm seeing it unfold between right in front of my eyes every single day. Every single human has it. So just giving yourself that space is so important.
Yeah. It's that I don't know how I know, I just know.
Right. And we love that. That's a key indicator. It's usually if you're like thinking about, oh, well, because so and so's doing it and that looks really fun and seems like that's a good path to go down. That's how you'll know. Like it's very easy
It
to
worked for them. So
work
it
for
should
them,
work.
work for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Before we wrap up, my last question is if I was to interview your friends or family, what would they say your superpower is?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. What would they say my superpower is? I don't know. I feel like it would probably be, I think it would probably be my like, I just call it kind of like my dreamer aspect, but I feel like it wraps up into it kind of all of the like the mystic, the the parts of me that see things that are more subtle, if that makes sense, or that hope for kind of more beauty in the world and that desire, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of the innocent part that's like, it gets to be better, it gets to be more beautiful, it gets to feel better, it gets to, you know what I'm saying? And just kind of seeing the beauty in people or in possibility or, you know, my love of animals, like all that kind of thing. It feels like it's that kind of that hope aspect, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. And that is a superpower.
Yeah, I think so too. It's
It
that
is.
wonder, right? It's like
Yeah, it is that wonder that
that
we
kind of
lose touch
wonder.
with. To continue that wonder into your adult life and beyond is
Exactly.
such a powerful move. Well, thank you again for your time and your wisdom. This was so wonderful. I look forward to continuing to learn from you and we'll chat soon.
Thank you so much for having me.